Welcome to another episode of the Solo Scaled Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ken Freire, and today we're going to be talking about what would be possible if you could take your podcast and it could buy you back some time instead of stealing it. Today's guest only works about 180 days a year thanks to his podcasting system that turns influence into income. So if you're tired of the hustle and want to create a business that supports your lifestyle, this episode is your roadmap. So Richard Kaufman, welcome to the podcast, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, and I gotta apologize for first of all, I'm not in my usual studio. I'm building myself a brand new studio, so I just want to apologize. I'm downstairs in the basement right now until the new studio is built. So I just want to apologize.
Well, no worries, man. For those of you who are just getting to know you, you are coming into a place where you're building your new studio, but you got a lot of transition coming. Your son is going off to college, so right after this recording, you're heading off. It's a busy summer for you,
Yeah.
so I will forgive you. I think the listeners will forgive you as well. Well, Richard, you're the host of the Vertical Momentum podcast, which has nearly 3 million downloads at this point. You're a military veteran. You love connecting, which is awesome. You and I are both connected on that. But you ultimately help entrepreneurs launch profitable podcasts in about just 12 weeks, often securing sponsorships, lead generating before even a single episode comes live. So, what we want to talk about today is your system. But let's start with the headline, right? A lot of people, they're like, this is some clickbait, right? That you only work 180 days a year. How exactly do you make that possible?
Well, last year I think we went on 3 cruises. We went on a couple different vacations. But when I say that I'm working 180 days a year, that means I'm working 12 to 18 hours a day, the 180 days that I am working. So
So you're hustling.
I'm not doom scrolling. I'm not watching cat videos. I'm actually putting in focused work for that 180 days. And if you really think about it, that's not a lot because if you figure every weekend is 2 days a week times 52, that's 104 days right there that I'm not working.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you have managed to build a system where you're like, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to play hard. That's
Yeah,
kind of the system that you built.
and I learned from John Lee Dumas. He's my mentor, which he actually mentored me. He actually wrote the whole back cover of my book, but he only records 1 day a week, and the rest of the time it's just putting out content. So if you can do something 1 day a week, and then you have your systems where you're putting it out every other day, you really don't have to work that hard as long as you put in that concentrated effort.
Yeah. And I am a huge fan of batching my content. So like I'll record 1 day a week for like a month. If I'm doing a whole bunch of solo episodes, it becomes a little bit harder when you're trying to invite guests and get all the guests lined up for that 1 day. But for the most part, when I'm recording, especially with my co-host Dan Sanchez, we just batch it, and it's way easier that way.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. So for you, you are kind of like you've built these systems, you're working hard, you're playing hard. One of the things in your system that you talk about a lot is that you try to help people make money before launching. How's that possible?
Well, think about this, and I was just thinking about this before we came on. As I was getting ready, I'm getting my jacuzzi ready. I want to get in it a little bit later. But before a movie comes out, they already have sponsors lined up. Like they have Coca-Cola lined up. They already have all these things. So why not do that as a podcast? Why not have all your sponsors lined up before you even launch? Because think about it, everybody knows at least one business owner in their close circle of friends. Ask that business owner, hey, I'm starting a new podcast. How about we work together? You sponsor the show, and you'll get more customers. And everybody knows at least one business owner. I know at least 100. So why not get those people to sponsor your show before you even launch? And it doesn't have to be a paid sponsorship. I've had people sponsor the show that gave me swag, t-shirts, hats, coffee, soda, uh, non-alcoholic drinks because I don't drink. Uh, you know, energy drinks. So it doesn't have to be a monetary sponsorship, but if you can get in front of their audience for free, and all you're doing is saying, "Hey," and but you actually have to drink the energy drink. Don't say you're going to don't say you're going to drink something, and if you don't even drink it. But if you say
Yeah.
on your show, "Hey, I'm drinking Physics Zero energy drink," like now I'm sponsored by Celsius. If I say I'm drinking Celsius, I'm getting in front of their audience pretty much for free.
Yeah.
So it
And
doesn't
how
have.
are you doing that? How are you doing that? Is it because once you say, "Hey, I'm sponsoring them," they're going to put you on their platform, or is it just because word of mouth? How is that working for you?
Well, say that if I'm using Celsius, I'm actually drinking a coffee right now. One of my coffee brands. I have my own coffee. But what I'll do is when I say during the show, "Hey," you'll actually see my can of Celsius sitting in the corner, and I'm drinking it the whole time. And I'll say, "Thank you, Celsius, for giving me the energy to complete the shows for today." And then when the episode goes out, I tag them everywhere, and then
Yeah.
also they're to buy are actually in the liner notes. So if people want to buy Celsius, now they can go to Celsius.com and actually order from Celsius using my code.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you're doing it with a very relational aspect to it. Like you said, hey, you're being really honest, you're being really transparent. You're going to people and saying, "Hey, at the beginning of this podcast, I'm launching it. Would you be a sponsor?" It doesn't have to be a monetary sponsor. It does just would you want to be a sponsor to get exposure to them? I'm assuming you're trying to get sponsors who align closely to the brand of the podcast, or you're just trying to get any type of sponsors.
No. Well, I'm people know me. I'm 100% honest and real. I'm in recovery 36 years. I don't drink. I don't do anything. And I've had people that had CBD companies, had liquor companies, um, upwards of six figures wanting to sponsor the show. And I told them no. How can I say, come and sponsor the show when I don't drink, but I'm going to be say, yeah, drink this beer, and I don't drink. That goes against my values. But I think if you're going to be a business owner, you have to align with companies that align with your values. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I'm
100%.
and I'm
Go
I'm
for it.
big I'm big on in the veteran space. So I do a lot of stuff with veterans. So I just think that whatever if I say that I use a product, I actually use the product because I can't like when I was with GNC for 30 years. If they would ask me, how does this have you ever tried this product? I would not feel good selling it if I didn't try it. If I didn't taste it, because I can't tell you it tastes great when it might taste like crap. And then you come back to me and you be like, you told me it tastes great. Well, I can't tell you that. So if you come in to buy something, I used to tell people, I have friends that used it. I've never used it, so I can't tell you honestly if it's good or if it's not good. So I believe if you're going to have a podcast that's going to last, because the average podcast lasts 12 to 13 episodes, if you're going to have one that lasts, I think you need to get sponsors that align with your values and with who you are.
Yeah, and I'm sure that most of those podcasts don't end up going further because they're like, what's the ROI here? They're not getting a return on investment, so they feel like, oh, I'm just doing this for fun. And for some people, it might be a passion project, but for others, they're trying to actually make something of it. And the way you're doing it is by trying to say, hey, early on, let's get some quick wins. Let's get some sponsors there because then that motivates you to kind of keep going, right? Is that kind of the play there?
Well, when I had lunch with Gary Vaynerchuk, we actually put a 5 year plan together where I wasn't on purpose going to make a profit for 5 years. When we did that for 5 years. I didn't make a profit at all. And that was on purpose because I couldn't go to a sponsor if I didn't have the numbers to back me up. So I wanted to say, hey, sponsor my podcast. Now I have 3 million downloads, and now I'm ranked up there with Ed Milet, with Gary Vaynerchuk, and I can show you the charts. Because I think a lot of people they don't get sponsors yet because they're trying too quickly to get the big paid sponsors, and they don't come unless you have analytics behind them. So
Got it. So you're
the first 5 years, I was just building, building, and building to where now, if you Google Vertical Momentum Podcast, we're on the first 8 pages of Google.
that's awesome.
So now if somebody says, well, why should I sponsor your show? I could just say, Google me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have that leverage for them, which is
But
huge.
5 years, like I said, for 5 years, I gave away free sponsorships because I didn't have any overhead. I had an iPhone. That was I recorded 1,000 episodes on an iPhone. That was my only overhead. I did it through Anchor, or now it's Spotify.
Spotify, yeah.
So that was free. So I had no overhead. So I can have free sponsorships and get in front of all these audiences for free because I knew that it would pay off in the long run. And I think, that's why, I think I just checked the rankings today, and we were, us and Alex Hormozy. I was one rank above Alex Hormozy on the podcast rank today. So I was happy about that.
I'm sure, especially at the time of this recording, he just released his book, and he just did this whole weekend live event for it. So the fact that you beat
I
him right
bought a
after
book,
that
guys.
event is
I
huge.
want to let you know I drank the Kool-Aid and I bought the book, but I also bought all the other books that he has. So
Yeah, I have all his books too. So he's got some great material when it comes to marketing and business. So I love that. So for you, Richard, as you are scaling this thing, talk to the person who's listening to this and they're like, I'm getting ready to launch my podcast. You kind of have a framework that you work with people 12 weeks for them to launch and start monetizing their podcast. What's kind of high overview, right? We can't do it all in this quick episode, but a high overview. What's kind of the steps that you take them through?
well, the first 2-3 weeks is finding your perfect avatar.
Yeah.
And like when and with John Lee Dumas, I got to tell you guys, I paid John Lee Dumas to mentor me. So I've spent over $150,000 in courses since I started my podcast. But the first 2 weeks, me and him worked together. It was finding your perfect listener. Because he's one of his favorite sayings is sometimes you have to go an inch wide. I mean, go to inch a mile wide, but go a mile deep. Because sometimes we try to figure out, well, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be the thing for everybody. And I think it was Mr. Jim Rohn said that if you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. So I think the main thing is, and even Hormozy and Alex and Layla, they both said that the riches are in the niches. So you have to find out who your perfect listener is, and that's the first thing we work on. Is it doesn't matter if you have the perfect microphone, if you have the perfect camera, if you're not marketing to the right person, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to listen.
Yeah.
So
And
that's the main thing I work. That's the first 2 weeks is just working on hammering down who your perfect avatar is and who your perfect listener is.
yeah, one thing that I remember old mentor of mine said when I was thinking about podcasting, I was like, oh, if I go too niche, will I get any listeners? And he's like, well, Ken, in the United States alone, there's 300 million people. How many people do you think are struggling with that topic that you're talking about? I'm like, well, at least 50. I just kind of threw a number out there. I was like, probably 50 million or even a million. So he's like, even if there's a million people who struggle with that problem, do you think you could get 1% of those people to listen? And I'm like, I think maybe, yeah, that's like 1,000 people. And or like 10,000 people. And all of a sudden it just got me thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is way easier to think about if you just keep narrowing the niche down. And you don't need 100,000 listeners, right? For some people, it's like, I just need the right 100 people to be listening to become clients and have a profitable business. So I love that you're doing that. You're narrowing down on their niche, or the perfect avatar. After the 2 to 3 weeks of narrowing down, what do you do next?
Well, then we talk about, because a lot of people, they worry about, I got to have the right microphone. I got to have the right camera. And
Yeah,
I break it down to the simplest form. I'm like, do you have an iPhone? And you have the, do you have the new iPhone? Most of us have either the new iPhone or the new Samsung. The camera on these things are so good compared to what they used to be that if you can't afford a laptop right now, if you can't afford a microphone right now, that's okay. We can work it out. Um, I have a portable microphone, Hydra X. That's what I use. That's something that I use. It works out well for me. I think my whole setup, including my laptop, maybe $1,000. But even if you just had an iPhone and $100 microphone, you're set. You're ready. The main thing is hitting the record button. That's the main. That's the thing. Because if you don't get started, you're never going to be successful. Because our first 100 episodes, they all suck. You're going to go back and listen to your first 100
Yeah.
episodes, and you're like, oh, I said 19 times. You go back and listen and be like, I should have changed this. I should have changed that. But each time you get better. If you get better 1% per episode, at 100, you're totally different. So that's the main thing, is getting people to just start and getting the basics and not having to worry about getting, all these different expensive things. So I know a lot of people, they built studios and never hit the record button.
Yeah.
You,
And it's shocking how much that happens. Where it's like, because I've been in the podcast game, you've been in the podcast game for a while, where people spend thousands of dollars. I mean, just like tens of thousands of dollars on just gear. And I can think of 5 people right now who were like, last year they were going to start a podcast, they bought the gear, and they still haven't pulled the trigger. So it happens. I love that you're just talking about just click record. The first 100 episodes are not going to be great. And it's true. For some people, it's not. And there are going to be others that because they're public communicators in some way or fashion, it's going to work. But after that, once you kind of work through those mindsets of helping them record, what else do you do in your framework?
well, then we talk about, well, what kind of show are you going to have? Is it going to be, are you going to be a solo show? Are you going to interview people? Are you going to do a hybrid? Because I find that doing a hybrid show works really well. Because sometimes I find I might have a guest and we might do really well. And then there might be an episode where I did one for New Year's Eve, like 5 years ago. It's hit hundreds of thousands of downloads. It's my number one podcast on Pinterest. It has over 300,000 views on Pinterest, which I never understood that. So I think you have to figure out, am I going to be a solo, or am I going to do interviews, or am I going to do hybrid? Because then you might have a couple of systems you have to work in. Is, being a solo is one thing, having guests and getting guests that's a totally different thing. So I think you have to figure out what your framework is going to be. And I think that's so important. Just like in the book Hook Point, in order to have a good hook point, you got to know what your framework is going to be. So I think you need to figure out before you hit record, am I just doing solo, or am I going to do a hybrid?
Okay. So when they start to figure those things out, then what happens? Is that the end of your frameworks, or is there a couple more steps to it?
No, then we actually, before we get them started, make sure that we have their logo set up, make sure we have their name set up, make sure that I have them do a check for just make sure that their podcast doesn't show up anywhere else. And because a lot of people I know, they started a podcast and, oh, wait a minute, there's already a podcast out there. And
Yeah.
then you got to worry about getting cease and desist letters. So before we even start, I make sure that they legally that they're okay. And then I also have them start an LLC before we even start to record, to make sure that they don't have to. They're not going to get jammed up and have 100 episodes and all of a sudden get a cease and desist letter, and now you're out of business.
Yeah, so you're kind of helping them with the legal aspects of it and the just business aspects. I know a lot of people who want to start a podcast and it's just kind of like it's a passion for them and they're like, oh, I might make it into a side hustle. But I know a lot of people who that stuff they get stuck on where they're like, oh, should I start an LLC? Should it be an S corp or a C? Like I'm like, dude, just just build it and it's okay. Like you'll
Yeah.
be fine. But I like that. So you go through the legal issues. Anything else that you do with them?
Yeah, and then also, if you're going to find guests, well, now I teach them how to build relationships with people. Like we met each other on
Big
one of
Facebook
our
group?
groups in one of our groups. So I teach them, what groups to join, how to join groups, how not to be salesy, how not to be pushy, but how to build relationships. Because if it wasn't for relationships, I wouldn't be able to talk to Gary Vaynerchuk, Robert Kiyosaki, David Meltzer. If it wasn't for somebody that I talked to before, I wouldn't be able to talk to these people now. And for me, it's all about building those relationships. And a lot of people, when they have somebody on their show, that's it. The relationship stops. Where me, every guest I've ever had on my show, I'm friends with.
Yeah.
I can reach out to anybody. I can reach out to David Meltzer and say, bro, I have a question, about, I have a question I want to ask about how to build $1 billion company. Can you come on? Or I could reach out to Steve D. Sims before he passed. And I'd be like, Steve, I have a question about blue fishing. Let me hop on. Let's hop on a call. And I think it's the building a relationship part is if you're going to have a podcast, 80% of people that come on your show are not going to share their episode. It's not going to happen. But I have a framework where, I use Calendly. I love Calendly. When you sign up for my show, I ask you to promise me that you're going to share your episode on all your platforms, including your email list. So when my episode goes live, hey, bro, episode's going live. Thank you for promising me to share this episode on all your platforms, including your email list. Guess who shares it out?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be called a liar, right?
Yeah.
It's
Because
just,
they gave you their word.
yeah. So, and I teach people about doing stuff like that. And then I also teach them, well, okay, you have a podcast out there. Now what? Just because you have an episode on whether you're using Spotify, whatever you're using, just because you have your podcast up there, that doesn't mean it's going to do anything. So I also teach them how to manually put your RSS feed onto like 35 other platforms. This way, if you're relying on Spotify to do it, they're not going to do it. If you're relying on iTunes to get you on other platforms, you can't rely on them. I mean, they might, but you can't. You got to make sure that you physically put your RSS feed out on every platform that's available.
Yeah. I have found that that we're recording with Zencaster, and I use Zencaster because they actually host the episodes, right? Unlike a lot of the other ones, they do a pretty good job of like um, distributing the content to other platforms, like all the main ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
They're throwing it out to YouTube, and it's video too. Spotify, Castbox, like all of those major podcast platforms, they're on. So
Mm-hmm.
it helps the process. But I like what you're saying is that you're like, hey, there's other ones out there that they're not integrated with some of these things like Zencaster. You still need to go do it manually and like go chase after them. Make sure you're everywhere in that aspect. So, Richard, as you are processing through helping clients and helping your people through these systems, what do you feel like tends to be the thing that they get stuck in the most when it comes to walking through your process, besides the avatar side of things?
Um, like I said, I think My book is called The Three P's of Podcasting. The reason why a lot of people quit podcasting is number one is their podcast isn't powerful. If your podcast isn't powerful, nobody's going to listen. If your podcast doesn't have a purpose, if you're just recording to record to have fun, eventually the fun's going to wear off. So if you don't have a purpose, you're not going to last. And then the last one is profit. If you're going to run a good podcast, a great podcast, it's going to cost money. And if you're like me, if you're married and have kids and all the money's going out every month and there's no money coming in, the wife is going to look at you and is going to be like, all right, you got to stop wasting money. So if your podcast isn't profitable after a while, you're probably going to give up on it. So it's one of those three things that's going to reason why you're going to quit and not last 12 episodes.
Yeah. And for us, that's where the way we've positioned ourselves is we love people recording podcasts, and we use it as a lead generator for either their, coaching company or the community or whatever they're building. Because many times what you're trying to do is help build trust, right, with people. And this is a great aspect. Like Richard, you and I have talked several times now. I was like, oh, I trust Richard. I'm thinking about him. I'm like, oh, he's working with vets, right? So I'm like, whenever I meet a veteran, I'm like, naturally now, and it's probably because we're both connectors, but I'm now thinking, oh, Richard works with veterans. Go work with Richard. He knows not only what you're trying to do, but he also knows your background a little bit more than if he were to be working with someone else, right? Like you could relate to them. You could talk shop with him a little bit better than someone else can. So that's the beauty of what we think about when it comes to podcasting is like, create a podcast, get your authority out there, get your brand out there, but also use it in different ways. You're using it with sponsorships at the front end. We're using it with lead generation, and it's not an either or. You could do both, right?
Yeah,
And
I do both.
it could be amazing. Yeah.
Because and like my mentor, Mr. Joe Nicasio, that's what he taught me. He said, your podcast, all it is a distribution platform. Like for me, I have my books, I got my T-shirt, I got my swag, I got my coaching. I do public speaking that I get paid for. I get paid 5 figures just to go speak about podcasting. But if it wasn't for my podcast, I wouldn't be able to do these things. And I think that a lot of people that they're business owners and they want to start a podcast. And then when I start teaching them, I'm like, why is your business not sponsoring your podcast? And they're like, I never thought of that. And I said, well, I got a friend, his name is Aaron Hale. He owns a chocolate fudge company. Now his fudge company sponsors his podcast and gets to write it off being a sponsor. But a lot of business owners think I'm going to start a podcast and they already own a business. So why not have the business sponsor the podcast? And you're able to double dip. You know what I mean? You're able to write it off, and you're able to, like you said, you're able to get people to buy from your business, even if you're just mentioning it once on the podcast.
Yeah, and that's where I have found so much. When you have that kind of authority and that brand, you can start pitching stuff, and it doesn't have to be hardcore pitches. It's just a reminder to people. Because the reality is most people are driving, right? They're doing something. They're doing the dishes. They're driving. They're doing laundry. They're not at the computers right away to buy the thing, but it's that constant reminder like, hey, do you remember Richard works with veterans? Hey, do you remember Solo Scale does this, right? Like all of a sudden, the third time that you pitch it, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go do that. And then they go push and do it, right? That's what I have found to be super helpful. Richard, as we get ready to wrap up this conversation, you've thrown out a lot of great nuggets, but I purposely didn't address something earlier on you said, right? Most people struggle to start the podcast because they don't hit record. What's one of the biggest mindsets that they struggle with, and how can you help them overcome that mindset so they could just start hitting record and get their podcast out there?
Can I say one curse word on here?
Go for it.
Fuck what everybody else says. Because a lot of people, they're worried, well, what does Uncle Charlie say that I'm going to be starting a podcast? What does my cousin say? What does my wife say that I'm going to be starting a podcast? Don't worry about what they're saying. hit the record button. You're going to get better. Don't worry what other people think, because you're already an influencer. You're influencing somebody, whether you have friends, whether you have cousins, or whether you have kids. You're influencing people already. All you have to do now is hit the record button and get your voice out to other people. So don't worry about what other people are thinking, because in the end, I'm a man of God. I realize that it's just going to be me and him in the end. So nobody else is on this journey with me. It's just me. So I think we have to worry about what we want to do, enjoy what we're doing, have fun what we're doing. But sometimes we have to do stuff that we want to do that other people may not agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are going to be people who they just don't understand the journey, right? And you're paving a new road for yourself. So I remember the first time, I kid you not, I started podcasting. I had a friend of mine like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not? Like, it's just fun." This is 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Well, now I've been on several big podcasts, and I hosted a pretty big podcast. I've started my own podcast. Um, I remember a relative of mine was like, "Man, Ken, I'm so proud of you for doing that. I've been watching you for years, and I never said anything until now." And we were sitting down eating dinner, and he was like, I wish I could do what you did." And so for many of you who are listening to this, I want you to take Richard's um, encouragement to heart. Like, man, don't worry about what people are saying, because in actuality, you're going to influence them in the future. So hit record, start now, and see what happens, man, because it's going to be a beautiful thing. Richard, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate all the things. If someone likes what you're talking about and they're like, "I want to work with Richard," what's the best way they could get in contact with you?
Well, they can direct message me, and I'm sure you're going to put everything in the liner notes.
Yeah,
I have a couple different options, like Alex Hormozy says. You have to have a couple different options. You could buy my ebook. It's $2. It's $2 on Amazon. And somebody wrote that if you buy the ebook by breakfast, you can have a podcast by dinner. It's 43 pages. Everything is clickable on the ebook, so you can start your podcast for $2. You can buy the hardcover from me, where I send out an autographed copy, and you get a strategic coaching call from me, $200 value for free just for buying the book. Or you can work with me for 12 weeks. That's a little bit more. It's not for everybody, but I take you from thought to profit within 12 weeks. And that's done through weekly phone calls, through I use StreamYard to take my classes, whatever the best way for you. And sometimes the coaching calls last up to 3-4 hours a week, and I work with you until you get profitable. So it's a guarantee that you get profit. This way you're not losing anything. I'll work with you for a year if you don't until you get profitable. So
yeah.
and any way I can do, and I'm going to offer this to anybody that's listening. Even if you just buy the ebook, I'm going to throw in that $200 coaching call for free. Even if
That's
they just
great.
spend $2 for the ebook.
So they could just literally reach out to you on your website in the show notes, be like, "Hey, I bought your ebook. Can I connect with you? Let's go
Yep.
for it."
Yep.
Richard, thank you so much, man. I appreciate this. I appreciate the way that you're trying to help people, man. Thank you so much. And let's continue the friendship. And for those of you who are listening, man, I know scaling a business can be hard, especially if you are doing it solo, but you don't have to do it alone. Get a community around you, get people around you, keep listening to us, and keep chasing after that goal, because we know your goal is ultimately leading to a vision of freedom, impact, and profits. Hope you guys have a great day.